My name is Nikki Mohan, and I will be your host today. This is the 10th tutorial in the Fluency series called the Fluencies in Action. During the course of this tutorial, you will first be able to describe how educators are using the fluencies in their daily practice. Second, be able to explain the journey these educators have followed to successfully integrate the fluencies into the mandated curriculum. 3. Be able to list some of the attributes of a lesson using the fluencies. And 4. Be able to describe solution fluency. But before we begin, I want to welcome you to the Committed Sardine channel. In our last tutorial in this series, I promised that in this session, we will be talking to some amazing educators to hear what they have to say about the fluencies. Today, I have the privilege to talk with Ashley Simonetti. Now, before we begin with asking questions, I want to take a moment to tell you a little bit about Ashley. I'm not sure that I will be able to do justice in the short time that I have, but I will give it my best shot. Ashley has been a classroom teacher for 32 years and has been an executive at Avalon Public School for 23 years. She has been an instructional leader at Avalon Public School, New South Wales, Australia, for the last 4 years, and most importantly, Ashley was an early adopter of the fluencies and now trains and supports educators in changing their daily practice through the integration of the fluencies. So Ashley, I first of all want to welcome you to the Committed Sardine channel and on behalf of the Committed Sardine team to thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I know that you have such a busy schedule and we truly appreciate you taking this time off from your actual teaching.
Oh, Nikki, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me onto the Committed Sardine channel. I'm really excited to be here.
So Ashley, let's get right into it. I know time is such an essential thing, especially for educators. So can you briefly explain why you personally decided to adopt the fluencies as a teaching and learning strategy?
Well, at Avalon Public School, our strategic plan, our school plan, one of the strategic directions is to build a culture of teacher learning that is future focused and prepares our students to mindfully and fluently collaborate, communicate and problem solve, and also most importantly to succeed as effective citizens in our rapidly changing world that we're in. As an educational leader, I believe we must be aware of the wider educational world beyond, particularly with regard to the concept of 21st century learning. And it's also reflected in our syllabus with the general capabilities framework. So it's something that in Australia, we must be moving towards this type of education and moving away from that traditional approach. And as educational researchers, both you and Ian have noted in your book, Literacy is Still Not Enough, that it's no longer enough that we educate only to the standards of the traditional literacies. And if students are to survive in the 21st century culture, then they need to have this skill set of independent thinking and creative thinking to be able to be competent and capable in the 21st century world we live in.
Well, that's really, really a fantastic, insight into why you've actually adopted that. So Ashley, my next question is, I believe that it was not long after you began this process that other teachers expressed interest in joining you on this journey. What was the reason for that? Because usually, it is hard to convince people to change or shift in their thinking and their entrenched practices. As an educator myself, I have seen how difficult it is to make this paradigm shift. So can you explain what happened at your school?
Well, we firstly introduced our modern learning journey to a small but enthusiastic group of teachers. Mm-hmm. And they actually had to fill out an expression of interest to be able to become part of that team.
Wow.
And I think by doing that, it allowed, already we had buy-in, because the group were interested and they were passionate and they were wanting to see a change.
Absolutely
in their teaching. So that by trialing it with that small but enthusiastic Lighthouse team, it allowed for the rest of our colleagues to see the impact this type of teaching and learning was having, and it made them more curious and more willing to actually give it a go and maybe be more willing to embrace this change. And they could see that the students, they were so highly engaged and there was a buzz of excitement in the air. And that also made them feel like maybe this is the way that we should be going, because it's really having an impact. The other thing that I did was I actually got the modern learning team to share their successes with the rest of the staff. So we had like a, what's working best in this type of teaching and learning. And following that overwhelming success of this trial with this small team, we then decided it was time to involve all the staff in this exciting journey and innovative teaching pedagogy that we had started to embark on. The other thing that I think was quite pivotal in getting that change and that shift that you were talking about was that as the instructional leader at my school, I actually started going into classrooms and I started modeling and demonstrating the 9D framework and how you could actually implement this in a classroom, that it was possible and that you could do it. And then that actually got them to see a success criteria and help them to work towards this shift and improve their teaching pedagogy.
Wow. I picked up some key words while you were talking. One was, getting teachers to actually express their interest. And I think that's a really interesting concept, because it's not PD done to them, but rather that they want to embark on this new learning. And I really love that concept, because you straight away got rid of the resistance. And the other key word I picked up was impact. Like, others could see the impact, not just, what teachers were doing, but I like the other word that you used was engagement, student engagement. And that's Absolutely. So critical. Like, how do you engage students? Because, it's really, really hard to get kids engaged and interested in something. So, the fact that teachers could see it, that the kids that were, in the classes of these teachers were engaged and motivated. So I really love the concept. And the last thing that I picked up from this was actually you going into rooms and modeling. So teachers, I'm guessing they actually felt they had support. They could see something, because people like to see things in practice rather than just talked about. So,
and they could see that it was working, and they could see the students engaged, and that got them excited.
Yeah, it wasn't like
and it also helped them to actually be less scared.
Yeah.
Like they could see me doing it, and they could see how it could work in a classroom, and they felt like that they could do that. And then from there, I actually watched them and I gave them feedback, and they gave me feedback. So it was this two-way process that worked really well.
It was learning together, and that's what I really, really like about it. As I said, it's not something that's done to them or done for them, but it's done with them, and that's fantastic. So our next question, now we know that there are 6 fluencies, as you know. you decided to begin with solution fluency, which is about real world problem solving. Now, why solution fluency first? And then can you also please explain or describe how you use solution fluency or this problem-based approach to learning in your classroom? Where at that time you were a classroom teacher and are very little kids too. So that's the most interesting part.
Look, I felt that out of all of the fluencies, it made sense to start with the solution fluency, because that fluency is all about solving real world problems. And I see it as the overarching fluency, and the other fluencies support that. So the solution fluency, it provides an evidence-based and practical approach that teaches the skills to our students in an explicit and systematic way. So the students have like a structured step-by-step process, which is cyclical, but it helps them to solve real world problems. And that step-by-step process is those 9 Ds. All of the other fluencies can then fit into that framework. And that solution fluency is sort of like the overarching fluency. And then the others can fit into it. So for example, if we took the discover stage of the solution fluency, in that stage, the students are, first of all, asking really good questions. That's the first A of the information fluency. Then in that discover stage, they're also going and accessing the information they need to solve the problem that they're wanting to solve. So they're researching, they're going to different sources and accessing that information. And then also, they're then authenticating the sources that they're accessing. So there we have 3 A's from the information fluency that work beautifully into that step-by-step process of the discover stage. So that's why I started with the solution fluency. I just felt that it made sense. We could teach that explicit framework to the students. And then the other, like the A's in the information fluency and then the E's in the collaboration fluency, not so much teach that so that they knew them
step by step
as much. It was more to support the teachers and weave them in.
Right. Wow, that's a good explanation for your reasoning behind the solution fluency. Is that anything else you want to add? Or?
Well, the second part of your question, you asked me to explain how you used, how I used the solution fluency in the classroom.
Yes.
So the way we did that was we decided the best way to do it was to integrate it into other KLAs. And we got
you just
together.
want to explain what KLAs is? Just what the
Okay, sorry, they're our key learning areas. Okay, so there's, literacy, maths, science, geography, history. And what we did was we had current units of work that we were working on that were based on the outcomes and syllabus of the, New South Wales curriculum. And what we did was we helped support and mentor staff to actually take those units and modify them to the 9 Ds.
Wow.
And then we built in the information fluency and went from there. And then we used those units of work in the classroom and taught the students that to go through that explicit step-by-step process.
Wow.